October 25, 1944, Surigao Strait, Philippines. 2:00 a.m. Admiral Shoji Nichimura stood on the bridge of the battleship Yamashiro, feeling the vibration of the engines through the deck plates as his fleet entered the narrow waters between Leyte and Dinagat Island. The night was moonless, perfectly dark except for the phosphorescence churned by his ship's wakes. He could see nothing beyond the bow, not the shore, not his accompanying vessels, only the blackness that was both concealment and risk. This was the darkness his nation had trained for, had refined into doctrine through decades of night combat exercises. Japanese optical rangefinders were superior to anything the West possessed, calibrated to extract targeting data from starlight, from the faint glow of bioluminescence, from thermal variations in visible to lesser instruments. His men had drilled in night gunnery until they could identify ship silhouettes at 8,000 meters in conditions European navies would consider combat impossible. Nishimura's battle plan depended on this darkness. He would transit the strait under cover of night, emerge into Leyte Gulf at dawn, and fall upon the American landing fleet with 14-inch guns before their carriers could launch aircraft. The Americans, he knew from intelligence reports and his own experience at Java Sea, were daylight fighters. They relied on air superiority and massed firepower. They were dangerous when they could see. Strip away visibility close to knife-fighting range and their advantages dissolved. The strait was only 40 kilometers long. By 4 a.m., he would be through. By sunrise, the invasion fleet would be burning. What Admiral Nikimura did not know, what no Japanese naval officer truly understood in October 1944, was that the Americans no longer fought with eyes. While his lookout strained against the darkness, while his rangefinders calibrated distances using optics perfected over generations, the American fleet waiting at the northern mouth of the strait was watching him with a sense that existed outside human perception entirely. Aboard the battleship West Virginia, 28 kilometers ahead, Fire Control Radar Mark 8 had been tracking Nichimura's formation for 40 minutes. The system painted a picture of the strait in microwave pulses, updating every 2 seconds, showing not vague shapes but precise positions, courses, speed. The radar operators could see Yamashiro, see the cruiser Megami following 3,000 meters astern, see the destroyers flanking, could see them with a clarity that darkness did not diminish, that weather could not obscure, that distance merely reduced to mathematics. The Mark 8 fed its data directly into the Mark 38 gunfire control system, a mechanical computer the size of a small room that calculated firing solutions automatically, compensating for ship motion, wind, the rotation of the Earth itself. The gun crews did not need to see their target. They did not need to estimate range. They simply loaded shells and waited for electrical signals to align the turrets. At 3:16 a.m., Admiral Jesse Oldendorf, commanding the American battle line from Louisville, gave the order to commence firing. 6 battleships, West Virginia, Maryland, Mississippi, Tennessee, California, Pennsylvania, at ranges between 19 and 22 kilometers. The distance was impossible by Japanese doctrine. No fleet engagement in history had opened at such range, in darkness, The first salvo from West Virginia consisted of 16-inch armor-piercing shells, each weighing 1,200 kilograms, arcing through the night at trajectories calculated to within meters. Nishimura heard the sound, a freight train roar growing louder, before he understood what was happening. Then the sea around Yamashiro erupted in waterspouts 30 meters high, bracketing the ship with such precision that he knew, immediately, they could see him. Somehow, impossibly, through 15 kilometers of darkness, the Americans could see him. The second salvo struck home. 2 shells penetrated Yamashiro's forward turret, detonating inside the magazine. The explosion tore through 3 decks, killed 120 men in an instant, and turned the battleship's bow into a furnace. Nichimura tried to return fire, but his optical rangefinders could find no targets. His radar, the primitive Type 21 air search set, could detect aircraft at 30 kilometers but provided no targeting data for surface combat. His gun directors scanned the darkness seeking muzzle flashes, finding nothing. The American battleships were firing from positions so distant their muzzle flashes occurred below the horizon, visible only as a faint glow that gave no indication of range or bearing. Yamashiro's main batteries fired blindly at estimated positions, shells falling kilometers short, hitting nothing. Meanwhile, the American salvos continued with metronomic precision. West Virginia fired 93 rounds in 22 minutes, a rate of fire made possible by automated loading systems and fire control that never lost track of its target. 74% of those shells fell within lethal radius. The Mark 8 radar, designed by Bell Laboratories and manufactured by Western Electric, could distinguish between ships separated by less than 300 meters, could track a dozen targets simultaneously, could maintain lock through smoke, rain, or the chaos of battle. It was not a weapon system, it was epistemological warfare, a technology that redefined what it meant to see. By 3:40 a.m., Yamashiro was dead in the water, listing 20 degrees, fires visible from 40 kilometers away. The cruiser Megami, attempting to turn back, was caught by cruiser fire from 8 American vessels that materialized from the darkness like executioners. She was hit by more than 40 shells in 15 minutes. Her superstructure shredded, her engine rooms flooded. 3 destroyers, Asagumo, Yamagumo, Mikishio, were sunk before their crews could even identify what was killing them. Of Nichimura's 7-ship fleet, only the destroyer Shigure escaped, fleeing south through the strait at 32 knots, her captain writing in his action report. "We were destroyed by an enemy we could not see, at ranges we did not think possible. Our optical equipment is worthless. Our training is obsolete. We are fighting blind against an enemy that owns the night." The Battle of Surigao Strait was the last battleship engagement in naval history, and it was decided entirely by technology the Japanese Navy had dismissed as auxiliary equipment. American radar development had begun in earnest in 1940, accelerated by British research shared through the Tizard mission, refined through billions of dollars in research at MIT's Radiation Laboratory. The Mark 8 fire control radar was merely one product of this effort. Others included the Mark 4 gun-laying radar, the Mark 12-22 air search combination, the submarine-mounted SJ surface search radar that had turned Pacific night waters into killing grounds for American wolfpack. The technology was not secret. Japanese intelligence had obtained radar samples from captured British equipment in Singapore in 1942. Japanese engineers had examined them, understood the principles, attempted to replicate them, but understanding and implementation were separated by an industrial chasm. American radar sets used magnetrons manufactured to tolerances measured in microns, required cathode ray tubes with lifespans of 2,000 hours. Depended on electronic components produced by an industry that did not exist in Japan. A single Mark 8 radar contained more vacuum tubes than existed in the entire Imperial Japanese fleet in 1944. The philosophical gap was wider than the industrial one. Japanese naval doctrine forged in the Russo-Japanese War and refined through decades of night combat training, treated technology as an extension of human excellence. Superior optics allowed superior warriors to see better. Superior torpedoes allowed superior tactics to strike harder. The technology served the warrior. It did not replace him. American doctrine inverted this relationship. The Mark 38 fire control system removed human error from gunnery. The radar operator did not need experience or intuition. He needed to read instruments accurately. The gun crews did not need to estimate or adapt. They needed to follow procedures. The system democratized excellence, made veteran performance available to conscripts with months of training. One was Bushido. The other was industrial process control applied to warfare. Captain Tamaiki Hara, commanding the destroyer Shigure and one of the few Japanese officers to survive Surigao Strait, spent the remainder of his life trying to explain what had been lost that night. In his 1961 memoir, he wrote, "We entered the strait as samurais, our training, our spirit. We were destroyed by machinery that made courage irrelevant. The Americans did not outfight us. They unmade the conditions in which fighting occurred. They turned battle into mathematics, rendered invisible by technology we could not counter. When Yamashiro sank, I understood we were not fighting a navy. We were fighting an entirely different conception of war, one where the warrior had become the servant of his instruments and somehow, in that servitude, had become invincible. The searchlights that Japanese doctrine had taught would blind American gunners were never switched on. The night combat training that had consumed thousands of hours proved meaningless. The darkness that should have been sanctuary became a medium the Americans owned more completely than daylight. Admiral Nikimura went down with Yamashiro at 4:19 a.m., his ship torn apart by weapons fired from beyond the horizon by men who never saw their target except as coordinates on a radar screen. The battle lasted 98 minutes. American casualties, 0 ships lost, 39 men killed. Japanese casualties, 6 ships sunk, 4,000 men dead. The disparity was not courage or tactics. The disparity was that one navy fought in 1904 and the other fought in 1944, and darkness no longer hid the difference.